Good morning. Thank you for joining us as we kick off our small business series, a collaborative program with the Greater Macon Chamber of Commerce in Score, Middle Georgia. I'm Andrew Eck, and I'm with the Chamber. Today, so Score is a volunteer service that provides free mentoring and low-cost education to small business owners. And as part of the Chamber's mission to foster vibrant small business communities, we're happy to present these important topics to the Chamber members and the business community. So before I welcome our co-host, I do want to mention the fact that we, during this presentation, we're looking for questions and would like to answer them. And so if you have any questions, if you will type them at the bottom of the screen, it says on the chat box, that will go to all the participants and we'll be able to see it. And then any relevant questions, we'll be able to ask it. So, and in fact, I'm sending the first chat right now. So, so Matt McKenna with Score is our co-host who will introduce our speaker. Matt.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. And also I would like to thank the Chamber, Greater Macon Chamber of Commerce, for supporting the SCORES program. As Andrew said, we're a volunteer organization, so we really appreciate the Chamber support for what we're trying to do in terms of fostering vibrant small business communities. I would like to thank our special guest today. Matthew Michael is a co-founder of M&R Marketing. He's a great small business success story. Matthew and his partner started out part-time about 12 years ago, and they finally made the leap, quit their full-time jobs, and dove into developing their business, M&R Marketing. Now they've grown to about 19, 20 people. They do a wide variety of marketing services. So they're a full services marketing firm now based in downtown Macon, providing everything from websites to graphics to consultations on marketing strategies. Numerous awards. They were the 2018 Small Business of the Year here in Macon and recently made the Inc. 5000 list. So Matthew, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Matt and Andrew and everybody at the Chamber and Score and those of you joining us this morning. We appreciate it. So as Andrew said, this will definitely be conversational. So some of you may have been through one of these already, but if not, just as you have the questions based on kind of what we're talking about, just send those through the chat, and then Matt and Andrew will kind of bring those to my attention and we'll talk through some of that. So as you probably saw, the topic for today is going to be on strategy and marketing strategy. For us, being a marketing agency is always a huge part of our client conversations, but with the shifts and waves that COVID has created, it has become an even larger discussion, both for us internally and how we perform our own strategy to gain leads, and then also how we do that for our clients. So there was a time where we had to kind of get settled with everything that was changing for ourselves. And then once we were able to get settled, we started immediately reaching out to clients and started offering resources to help them navigate all the uncertainty that we were facing. And so that's a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you all this morning. So we're going to talk about strategy. Back in March, we at M&R made the decision to send our team remote. And as Matt said, we have a team of about 20 folks. And luckily, we were already pretty prepared. About 20% of our team was already working remotely full-time. And so we had the technology and the processes in place to kind of ease that transition. But it was still difficult. And what that communication looked like with our team, we didn't return to the office until July. And when everything kind of went into lockdown and consumers were just very uncertain, we started to see that effect for us. April and May were low months for us. We started seeing that with our clients as well. We have clients in some of the industries that were hit very hard with entertainment and restaurant and some of your B2C type industries. And so we worked very closely with them and really did a strong pivot for ourselves and for a lot of our clients as well. And all these changes that we were making were based on some of the changes that we were seeing in consumer behavior. And a lot of these changes are still active today. And so I wanted to touch on just 4 main shifts in consumer behavior that we noticed. And each of these have a huge effect on your marketing approach and your strategy. So kind of gaining an understanding of these changes is just vital to making sure that the strategy that you have in place is matching that. The strategy that you had in place for January and February is likely not accurate and not as effective today because of everything that changed. So the 4 big areas that we saw changing in consumer behavior, and we'll kind of dig into each of these, was frequency, location, attention, and intention. So we'll kind of talk about each of these a little bit now. So the first one being frequency. So COVID completely changed consumers' schedules, their daily routines, the way they consume and interact with media. All of that radically changed. A lot of the resources that we follow and engage with do a lot of work in tracking consumer media consumption. And they saw use of in-home data usage go up by nearly 40% compared to this time last year. So everybody was at home, everybody was consuming media. This also led to a huge increase in use of social media, in use of video streaming services. Netflix saw their largest gains in the history of their company. Some of that started to level off for them a little bit, but it was historical use of in-home data. And Nielsen, who does a ton of reporting on consumer behavior, is estimating that it could increase by as much as 60%, because a lot of this is just becoming the new normal. Even for those who may have returned to work, they haven't returned to out-of-home entertainment. So they're still very much focused on being in the home and kind of entertaining themselves there. And then this also saw an increase in web traffic, so up by around 13 to 15% overall. So the frequency of media usage just skyrocketed. And of course, the majority of this is an increase in digital media. So we're going to talk about that a little bit when we sort of talk about how these shifts should affect your marketing strategy. But it's just important to note the frequency changes that we're seeing are heavily tied toward digital media. So obviously the connection there is that your marketing strategy should also be leaning, pretty heavily on digital media. So the first shift was frequency. The second shift was location. So the location of your consumer has changed. The remote work has soared. Extracurricular activities have come to a halt. We've got 3 young sons, and sporting events, church events, school, all of that is at home right now. Like I said, 4 or 5 months, I was working from home. A lot of changes. The location of your consumer has changed. Work from home is going to continue to be on the rise. You're seeing across the nation organizations going all the way into 2021 of deciding how they're going to have their employees return to work. So they called this the largest work from home experience of all time. And a lot of businesses are latching onto that. They've seen decreased expenses and overhead with their team working from home. And the productivity levels have remained pretty consistent on a lot of the statistics that they're seeing. So this is a trend that is unlikely to change anytime soon. So that's the second area that consumers have started shifting that really should impact how you market is their location. Because for you to be able to market to them, you have to know where they're at. So the location plays a big factor in that. The third is their attention. So that's attention with an A. So although your market is likely a little anxious about the uncertainty that's kind of going around, they are actually more attentive right now than they were previously. That might seem counterintuitive, but the fact is that their inbox is less cluttered than it was before. Their schedules are, for the most part, less hectic. They have less out-of-home activities, less evening obligations. And then coupled with that, their focus on growth is stronger than ever because so many businesses have been sidelined by this. A lot of their extra time has been used to focus on growth. So the consumer's attention to the available resources to them is higher than it's ever been. And they have more time to actually give attention to the things that have been on the back burner for quite a while. You know, a lot of businesses, as they've slowed down, they've kind of picked up the things that have been sitting on the to-do list for months and years that they never got a chance to get around to. And so they're exploring that. And so that's created the perfect market formula. You've got a great opportunity to be heard right now because there's less clutter, there's less market conversation. And then you have a better chance just to control the leads experience, to get involved in kind of having that conversation with them and knowing where they're at based on some of the market shifts. The fourth, and then I'll kind of pause here to give us some time to answer any questions that may have come through. The fourth shift in consumer behavior is intention with an I. So the intention of these businesses and consumers have changed. So as many businesses are experiencing market loss or declining sales, as I mentioned, they're using that time to proactively research ways to push through and pivot. So they're using this extra time during a down market to really research, what do I need to be doing? And there's been amazing stories that have been shared about businesses that have made massive pivots, some even outside of their own industry. And so their intention has really changed a lot to figure out how they adapt during this time. They are researching now more than ever in preparation to buy later. So all of our industries, no matter what industry you're in, listening this morning, you have a sales funnel. So depending on what you sell, that sales funnel looks different. The amount of time of that funnel, you know, may be short, may be long. You know, if you're selling a disposable item, you know, if you're selling food or selling a shirt or, you know, some type of artisan type product, that may be a shorter sales funnel. You know, they're making an intentional purchase and doing it. But then in more service-based businesses, that funnel is a little bit longer. They're taking time to research and understand. And so what we're seeing is the research phase of that sales funnel, where businesses are trying to figure out, okay, who am I going to use for this service? What are my options? what are other people saying about this? What's the best purchase price? What are the reviews on this? That research phase has extended. Customers are researching brands more heavily online, having more online interactions with businesses than they ever have before. So the intention has really shifted to more of a research focus. And so that also plays a big role in how you market, how you're communicating to those that are in that research mode. So it's added some pressure to consumers on potentially tighter budgets to choose the right partner. Budgets have tightened, they have more time to do research, and so they're putting a much stronger emphasis on who they choose to partner with. So they're really in this time looking for a partner who is going to be able to add some value to them. So the 4 behaviors that we really quickly ran through, and if there's questions on any of these, we'd love to answer it. But those 4 kind of big shifts that we've seen is a change in frequency, so how they're using media, change in location, so where they're actually consuming that media, a shift in attention, so what your access is to them, and then a shift in intention, kind of what their goals are for the services that you may offer.
Yeah, Matthew, I did have a question. Could you maybe talk a little bit about the difference between businesses that are selling direct to consumers versus business to business? A lot of business to business services are very relationship based, where you've got a salesperson who's physically on, visiting clients, making presentations, and now that's shifted a lot. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference between your business to business clients versus your business consumer clients and how they're dealing with this.
Absolutely. And both of those have had to make pretty substantial shifts. On the B2C side, retail, some of those type industries, they've had a lot of obstacles with people just not feeling comfortable coming into the store. And so it's a lot harder to sell a product if you can't have a consumer come in. Luckily, there's been a growing trend over the last 10, 12 years of e-commerce sales. And I know this is something that Andrew has a lot of experience in with his business, but one thing that we saw businesses doing is in the consumer industry, if they had not previously put a lot of focus in online and digital sales, that was the first pivot they made. So how is it that I'm going to sell my products online? So whether that's doing the shopping integration with Facebook and Instagram, whether that's doing a larger investment into e-commerce and figuring out the logistics of shipping and delivery. You've seen a lot of businesses come up with ways to still allow the consumer to kind of virtually touch and feel the product that they're going to be getting. You've seen that shown through just a higher use of video. So demonstrating the product more through video and photography. So that's been one of the shifts there that you've seen in more of the retail setting. Of course, all the restaurants, big chefs and to-go orders, a higher focus on catering, a lot of pivots within that industry. On the B2B, more service side, that has certainly been a challenge for us, at M&R Marketing is we are extremely relational, and we always find that if we have an opportunity to sit down and meet with a client, our conversion rate is significantly higher versus that interaction being done 100% digitally. So we've had to kind of shift how we do our marketing presentations and proposals. We, of course, did a lot through Zoom, and we're still doing a lot through Zoom, even though we're back physically in the office and have been for 3 months. We still have a lot of people that are just not comfortable meeting in person. And so it's put a greater focus on what our follow-up is. So, for any of the proposals that we give digitally, we have a follow-up process that includes mailing a physical copy of that proposal along with some of our curriculum, um, being more proactive, and just the touches that we have with them through social and newsletters and some of those. Um, you know, we are not heavily sales driven as far as going out to cold leads. I know that there are industries that are focused on that have had a really challenging time because they can't knock on doors right now. And so they've used that to really, again, pivot and think about how can we reach consumers if we can't knock on the door. And so regardless of industry, it's required a lot of creativity to kind of navigate through that and just think about the different touch points that you have, with your consumers.
Well, it's it's also lead times have changed for everything. Since the fact you can't buy paper towels at most grocery stores now, it's struck the consumer, but it's obviously affected the businesses as well. So that's which goes into the fact that it's more research, but what some of the pivoting may not actually be a change in business product or service. It just may be a change in purchasing, which may be more higher volumes or diversified vendors, or looking at the origin of the vendor and trying to find more local vendors. And then, so it's not just the best price and the best quality. There's a lot more at play, which if you're a more expensive vendor, with a higher quality, you have something else to sell that wasn't really paid attention to 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Matthew, do you see any of the SBA business loans changing behavior for small businesses?
It's funny that you asked that. So I can speak to our business personally. We were very fortunate that while we had 2 months that were lower than what we expected, for the year, we're going to come out, about like we did last year. And what we were able to do, we signed up for the payroll protection plan loan, and were approved for that. And we were actually able to use some of that to give back to our team, and we were able to launch an employee benefits package. So, we're a small team, 19 folks, and we've always had a desire to have a good benefits package, but it just hasn't been feasible for us. And so the funds that we were able to get through that loan, and the fact that, we made it through so far this COVID, kind of gave us the confidence to be able to launch a benefits package that included health, dental, vision, and life. And so, our team is the reason that we made it through this. And so to be able to kind of reward them with some of these services has been great. So, for us personally, it helped in that way. I think that from a market standpoint, you started to see kind of a back to normal type behavior in July, August is when we started hearing that from our clients, that things were getting back to normal. And I'm sure that had something to do with the PPP loans that businesses were receiving, the personal tax refunds that individuals were receiving. All of that certainly helped. One thing that we haven't been able to measure, and probably won't be for a little while, is just kind of the results of the election. as far as if people are going to kind of pull back again with how they're spending, just as they kind of wait to see what shakes out nationally. But all in all, from our experience, the loans that the government has issued has been helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I personally spent most of it on. So we also got the EIDL, the disaster loan, and that can be spent beyond just payroll. And so we spent it on materials because we were having supply chain shortages, and we went and bought 6 to 18 months worth of almost everything we could get our hands on, and we got it at a better discount as well, and we wouldn't have normally done that, but it kind of guarantees it because we were just short on screws, short on this, and gloves, and all these other kinds of things, and it was slowing us down. So we were trying to get some stability there. So, which is kind of what you were doing, is you were investing in your people, which is your most valuable resource, and trying to make sure no one dips out, before it's over.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say that our SCORE clients, to your point, Matthew, about pivoting, many of them use the loans to give them a little breathing room to spend more money on their their marketing pivots. We've seen a number of our clients who have really amped up their Facebook and Google, their digital marketing. So even if they were in the retail business before, they really have spent a lot more time, effort, and money. And of course, as you know, with being a small business owner, the most valuable thing you have is your time. So it's a combination of if your retail shop is shut down and you're not going in there, you don't have employees coming in, how do you spend your time? And a lot of our SCORE clients have been spending a lot more personal time learning and getting up to speed on how to do digital marketing. So I guess given those 4 shifts in behavior, what are the kinds of reactions or proactive actions people are taking, or that you would suggest people take to deal with those changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are pretty drastic changes. We haven't really seen a set of changes like that all at the same time in quite a while. So it definitely forces a shift in strategy. And like I said earlier, if you came into 2020 with a strategy and you're still working from that Word document today, then it's likely that you're not communicating in the most effective way. So a few shifts that we've made for ourselves as well as advised clients on is a shift in messaging, a shift in targeting, and a shift in the ad platforms that you're focused on. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about each of those, and then I think we'll have some additional time at the end to answer any questions that you have about those. So if you've got any questions so far, even if it's on something we've already talked about, just shoot those through the chat feature and we'll make sure we answer those. So the first way that we're advising to shift is in your messaging. So the messaging should always be relatable, but now more so than ever, it should be relatable to what's going on with your consumers. You've seen a lot of national ads that have gotten a lot of attention for being tone deaf, where their messaging is just off point. I saw an article yesterday about a national campaign that Burger King just ran that was encouraging people to go to old fast food restaurants that had shut down and to take a picture of it. And then it led to an interaction with Burger King's website. Completely tone deaf to the fact that so many businesses are shutting down across America because of COVID, and they got blasted for it. And so your messaging needs to be relatable. It needs to be sensitive to the current situation. high focus on hope, being a resource, being a partner. It should be conversational. Because the sales funnel has extended, it's not quite as much of a sales pitch. It's just knowing, making sure that they know that you're available when that time comes. So it shouldn't just shift in tone and focus, but there should also be a shift in frequency. So you need to constantly be in front of them, being prepared to have a constant communication with them. And then, closely connected to the messaging is also just the design that, couples that messaging. So we do a lot of social media work for our clients, and all of our design work for social ads, social posting had to completely change to where, we didn't show people holding hands or in a huddle or doing sports or, in large event spaces. So even down to the imagery that you use, whether it's stock images or images that you have of your own business, even thinking about, does that imagery match the current landscape that we're in? So it's very important to have a shift in that. The second is going to be a shift in targeting. So this is really where you're understanding who your market is, where they're spending their time, how they're engaging with the different platforms that you're going to be showing your message on. Because there's been a huge shift in that, as we mentioned earlier. Consumers are visiting businesses less often, which impacts some of your geo-targeting. If part of your strategy was targeting certain areas of town or certain types of businesses that kind of match your target demographic, those geo-targets have shifted. Consumers are at home instead of their businesses for a lot of these. So that means if you're doing direct mail, that changes your address list. The in-home media consumption has skyrocketed. So that's a shift in your digital targeting. So really just thinking about your clients, who they are, where they're spending their time, how their business has been affected personally, and then really using that to think about how this should impact your targeting. Because for every business that we're working with, there has been some shift in their targeting. It may be minor for some, it may be drastic for others, but where your consumer is has certainly changed. And so that has to affect where you're targeting. Otherwise, you're going to see, a lower return on the leads that you're going after through some of these digital platforms. And now is really the time to be optimizing, your spend on some of these platforms. And then the third kind of shift is in the actual ad platforms that you're focused on. And there's a few ways that we're seeing be effective within that. The first is really just doubling down on all of your communication tools. So as we mentioned earlier, consumers are more accessible than ever. They're also delaying a lot of their decisions. So staying in front of them constantly is so important. You're seeing that through increased promotion through social, through blog articles, newsletters, videos, really kind of having a chance to interact and engage in a more personal way with your client. So huge shift there. You're going to have a chance to speak directly to the market. So do it effectively, do it consistently, do it with the long game in mind. But your communication tools are just so important during this time. Another area of your ad platforms that you should be exploring is remarketing campaigns. So this might be something that some of you are less familiar with, but essentially a remarketing campaign allows you to serve ads to people who have previously engaged with your brand digitally. So if they went to your website, if they went to your Facebook page, then through remarketing, you have the ability to continue serving ads to that same person. And this has always been a strategy, but now with this sales cycle being longer, it's so important to continue to stay in front of that person, because it may be that when everything hit the fan in April, they used some of that extra time to really start researching the companies that they were going to work with. And then maybe it's September or November before they have the budget to be able to perform that service. So if you're engaging in remarketing ads, that means you stayed in front of them between April and September. And so they've stayed familiar. They've clicked on a remarketing ad and visited your website again. It adds to that frequency. It's just kind of like a constant reminder of what you offer and how you can be a resource to them. So getting in front of them and then staying in front of them is really the benefit of remarketing. And then the last kind of platform recommendation is just thinking about how your targeting should shift to homes instead of businesses. So, just making sure that you know where your consumers are at and that your targeting matches that. So for some of you, that may mean, for the first time you explore in-stream ads through Hulu, geofencing employees at their home instead of their businesses is through something called addressable geofencing, or buying direct mail lists that are more focused on home addresses than business addresses. So a lot of shifts that need to be made based on how consumers are responding to everything going on with COVID.
Yeah, one of the challenges that I know our clients face, and just like you, as being small businesses, is as we talked about before, time is a very valuable asset, and so there's a question of on the front end, how do you do the research to figure out which marketing channels your target consumers are going to most likely be reached through? And because there's so many different ways now. I guess we used to have TV, radio, and direct mail, and that was about it. Now there's just so many different channels that people get through. So it's kind of a two-part question. One is on the front end, how do businesses do the research to figure out how to spend their time and effort on the most promising channels? And then on the back end, how do you get feedback to see how well that's working in terms of how you're spending your time and money on these different channels?
Yeah, so one interesting kind of development that has happened is you're seeing more industries do the sharing of information. So, it used to be that in some industries, they were protective of kind of their strategy, their information. And a lot of what COVID has done is caused industries to kind of come together and fight this, as a group. You've seen that a lot in the restaurant industry, where there's been more sharing of information. So, hey, this is what's working for us. Hey, we tried this, it didn't work. Or you should talk to so-and-so because they did that. And so, one good place to start is in, what may have previously been thought of as a competitor, actually taking the step to reach out to them to see what is working for them, see if there's some things that you can do together, combine efforts on. Matt, you weren't looking for this, but I'll give a plug to you. You've got somebody like SCORE, the Chamber, some of these organizations that are working with a large collection of clients. And so they're hearing from multiple clients across multiple industries. And so they will have cast a much wider net just by the nature of what they do as consultants. So reaching out to really kind of see what they're hearing and thinking. And then there's also just the sense of you just gotta put in the extra time. I mean, there's oftentimes no substitute for just working hard and knowing that this is going to take extra time. And it requires a lot of time online, and also don't neglect just reaching out and actually talking to your clients, asking them, how is this affecting you? What are you changing? How can we better support you? There's a lot of information out there. You just gotta kind of spend the time to collect it.
Matthew, we got a question is, can I use SEO effectively to advertise on my Facebook business without having to set up a blog?
Yeah. So for SEO, the most important factor in ranking well for your services is going to be ongoing relevant content posted to your website. So your blog is always going to be a very important aspect of that. It's going to be challenging to rank well for all of your services organically without a blog. So I would certainly focus on that. If you haven't set up a Google My Business page, which is Google's free local listing for your business, definitely do that. That's a great benefit to your SEO ranking, and it's completely free. But with the blog, you get the value of your search ranking. But the other big benefit is something that we mentioned earlier, is with this elongated sales funnel with people sitting in the research phase longer, if you're adding relevant content to your website that is serving as a resource to potential clients, then that's just improving the relationship that you have with them when they get ready to buy. And so the more resources you can offer to them, the better. So a blog is a great way to kind of improve your ranking, but then also provide a resource to future clients.
Well, so then my follow-up would be, okay, so a blog is helpful in those areas to get updated content and resources as you come along with it. But what if my industry isn't very, it's pretty plain, pretty dry, or I personally, as a business owner, am not very creative. And so either way, I create a blog on my website, but I don't keep up with it very often and post twice a year. Is that still worth it to have it?
Yeah. So the tricky thing about a blog is exactly what Andrew said. It is very common, and you see this on Facebook pages as well, where they have all intentions in the world and then it's dormant. And so we always recommend having an article for blog, having an article strategy in place before you ever start, because it's really difficult to come into work Monday morning and you have a to-do list that says write article, and you're like, well, what am I going to write about? It's much easier if you carve out 2 hours, you put it on your calendar, and those 2 hours are dedicated to coming up with the article title, the keywords you're going to focus on, and 2 to 3 sentences that article is going to be about, and do that for 12 articles. You spend 2 hours, and then you have 12 articles that you're going to write over the next year. And then when you come in on Monday morning, you say, okay, here's my November article. I've already done the title. I've already given myself 3 sentences that describe it. Let me write it. But if you don't go in with a strategy, it's the same way with social or anything else. It's just not going to get done. It won't be a priority. It won't be consistent. So definitely need a strategy. The other thing to remember with blogs is it's never too late to start. If you don't have one and you can find the time to do it, do it. But you need to remember that writing a blog today is not going to put you on a Google result next week. So SEO is the long game. We've written articles on our website for the last 9 years, and for the last 3 years, we've written one article a week. It's the long game. You have to build out those keywords and descriptions. But if it's something where you need to be showing up on Google tomorrow, then at that point you're getting into Google Ads and some of those features. But it's definitely not too late to start.
Well, that's with any marketing tactic is you can't just run a Google ad campaign or a Facebook ad campaign or really any kind of campaign and expect to see the results you want to see at the price and everything in the first month. I mean, it's a 3+ month commitment that you have to commit on that term basis before you might see the results, but the cost per click is 4 or 5 times higher than what you can budget for. How would you advise customers, given the fact that you have to go a long period of time on a tactic, but if you're a traditional brick and mortar business that's shifting digitally, and you're going kind of on a trial and error basis, trying to see how to find customers, what's the find one thing, stick with it for 3 months and alternate, or throw everything in the first month and then how do you get started? I mean, besides just finding other businesses that are doing it.
Yeah, that's tricky. So we always tell clients that it's much better to do 1 or 2 things really well than 4 or 5 things halfway. So take social, for example. If you're not doing a lot of social right now and it hasn't been a part of your marketing strategy, don't go set up an account for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest and then not do any of them well. Pick one and just crush it. Come up with a strategy, make daily posts, use, Facebook, for example, use the built-in Facebook insights to see what your engagement level is, to see when posts are connecting with people the most often, what time, what type of content. There's a lot of resources out there that can give you kind of some baseline information on which social media platforms work best for your target demographic. So just say that your demographic is females aged 45 and above who are career minded. You can start doing some searches like that and get some general statistical recommendations for platforms that work best. A great resource to just spend hours of time is HubSpot, HUBSPOT, and it is full of resources, statistics, ebooks, seminars, all completely free. Covers every industry, covers every ad platform out there. And it's just a wealth of information to kind of figure out where your focus should be. But, to Andrew's other point, you have to give it the time to see what it's going to do. Especially if it's something new for you. You can't try it for 6 weeks and say, well, this just didn't work for me. We always tell clients, if you're going to commit to a service, and if that service has a budget, then you need to go ahead and say, okay, if you're spending $500 a month, you need to go ahead and say, I'm not going to start this service unless I have $3,000. because I'm not going to give up on this for 6 months. I'm going to let it do its thing. I'm going to see if it works. But if you pull the plug after 6-8 weeks, you really haven't given it time to find your market, to discover what's connecting, to figure out ways on how to optimize the cost per click, to figure out, where are you directing them and what are they doing once they get there. So you need to pick something, make sure you pick it correctly, do your research on that, and then commit to it for 6 months and focus on 1 or 2 things instead of 7 or 8.
No, that's great advice. I think that's part of the problem people have is they're trying to spread themselves too thin. I think the other really important point that you all are making that we see a lot of our clients struggle with is that 2 hours you mentioned. People are so busy working in their business that they don't take time to step outside and work on their business. And so I think even if it's a Sunday night, somehow you just have to force yourself to carve some time out, do some thinking, and set some and think about your strategy. Again, we've seen a lot of small businesses who Tuesday morning they decide to post a Facebook ad, and with no kind of real plan or thought or context, just I need to do something, so I'll put an ad on Facebook, and then the next week it's like, well, I'll run a Google ad, as opposed to what you're both saying, which is you need to be very intentional, have a strategy, and then work that strategy for some time period, see how it works out, and then see where it goes. So I think it's a great point. I know it's very hard for all small business owners to do that, but we have a lot of people who are working really hard, but you have to force yourself to take a part of your day, a part of your week, a part of your month to think about your business and think about your strategies. That's a great point.
When I started a Google ad campaign with M&R Marketing, actually, so we started, I believe, in November, and it took us about a month just to get it going effectively, where it was actually running smoothly and operating the way we wanted to. And then it operated for another 3 months, way too expensive. So it's, you give a max budget of what you'll spend, and my cost per click was like $2 to $3 per click of going in, which was about 5 times more than I could spend. So my advertisement budget was projecting to be 5 times more than what I could make it work out. And it went from $2 to $3 a click, and it's and then March, by month 4, it went down to like 50 cents, and then all the way went down to like 30 cents a click. But it took a long-term mindset of 4+ months before it was actually operating the way you wanted to.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll say to Matt's point that is just such a crucial component to being a small business owner is carving out the time to work on your business instead of in your business. That's something that took us a long time to figure out. And one of the ways that we were able to start doing that is we got to the point where we were comfortable hiring other people to do our work. And so, the first decision we made was hiring a CPA. Took a ton of work off our plate, and it was things that we didn't really know how to do and weren't doing that well anyway. Second thing we did was hire an attorney. Then we were able to hire a financial advisor. Then we were able to start hiring internal team members to delegate some of the things that we were doing and allow other team members to do that. And so when you can start kind of shifting some of the work and not just be the service provider. So if you're a landscaper, for example, what can you do to stop cutting the grass to allow you to focus on the more important things like lead generation, processes, procedures, some of those things. One thing that has been really helpful for me personally in that, and you can Google this term and find a lot of information on it, but it's called a clarity break. And this is a term that comes from the business model that we use, which is called EOS. But every the first Friday of every month, I have it built into my calendar that from 8 to 12, I'm not in the office. And I don't have my computer, I don't have my phone. All I have is a notepad. And those 4 hours are 100% focused on working on the business. And the only thing I go in is at the top of my page, is written what's working, what's not working. That's the only thing that I go in with. And then from there, that clarity break is really used to kind of focus on what needs to be improved. And if you Google that term, you'll see for some people, they do 1 hour per week, they do 2 hours every other week. For me, it works better to do a block of time. And so I do 4 hours a month. But it's on the calendar. It's an appointment with yourself. You can't do anything other than work on your business, because if you don't schedule it, it just won't happen. It's just the fact. Like, we've all got too much going on. And so you've got to schedule it, but then you've got to value it. Do you see the value in working on your business? And if you do, you'll make time for it. And I think, like Matt said, it'll be hard at first because you're like, well, who's going to do so and so? But after you do it a few times, you'll see that time is way more valuable than the fire that showed up when you walked in that morning.
Yeah, and then what better way to wrap it up is, time to work on your business and start with a marketing strategy. Think about your customers, where they are, how to get to them, what's changed, what hasn't changed, what are you doing well, what's not working, and then maybe from there you get you start building out new marketing strategies. But Matthew, thank you so much for talking today and giving us a very thoughtful and in-depth presentation on kind of status of of our community and how to market to them. So this recording will be saved and published on the maconchamber.com, and will also be put on to the Facebook, the Chamber of Commerce Facebook page. If you have any other questions, please reach out to the Chamber, and we'll be happy to email back between the three of us. Matt, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just want to thank Matthew, and would encourage people to check out the M&R Marketing website and blog, because there are some very useful articles there. And so what your website is, M&R, what?
Yeah, it's mnr-group.com.
Okay, good. Yeah. And so thank you very much. I appreciate it. And again, thanks to the Chamber for hosting this, and everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Well, and Matt, what's the next? Is it November 4th is our next
Good point, Andrew. Actually, November 11th. So November is going to be government contracting month. So November 11th, we're having a presentation from Eileen Zellner from the GT-PAC organization on how to do business with the government. We're also going to have Sam Henderson from Make and Bib talk about how to do business with the local government. And November 18th, we're going to have some small businesses who are doing government work who are going to talk about their lessons learned on how to do business at the federal, state, and local level. So hopefully you can join us for those sessions as well.
Great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you November 11th.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.